Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to talk about one of the most common and honestly one of the most expensive mistakes that new traders make, and that's misreading market depth. It is a huge stumbling block, but it's one that you can completely avoid. And today, we're going to fix it for good.
Just a quick reminder, as always, this is for educational purposes only. It's not financial advice. Digital assets are risky, so please always do your own research.
So picture this. You're looking at a depth chart. You see this massive green wall of buy orders stacked up right below the current price, and that thought hits you, clear as day. Okay, support is guaranteed. It feels like a safety net, right? Like there's no way the price can fall through that. But then, just as the price gets close, poof, the wall evaporates. It just disappears into thin air, and you're left watching the price slice right through where that guaranteed support was supposed to be. Look, if this has happened to you, don't worry. It's incredibly common. And today, we're going to fix that. Let's start with what I like to call the depth chart illusion. See, the problem isn't the tool itself. Depth charts are super useful. The problem is understanding what you are really looking at on that screen. So what even is a depth chart? The easiest way to think about it is as a picture, a visual summary of the order book. And the most important word there is snapshot. It is just a photo of the order book at one specific moment in time. What it is not is a prediction. It's not a crystal ball. It's not a promise. It's just a picture of right now. So why is this snapshot so misleading sometimes? Well, it usually boils down to a pretty basic misunderstanding of how markets actually work. We're going to break it down into 3 core reasons that explain why those guaranteed walls of support or resistance so often just vanish. First, and this is the big one, walls can move. A huge order can be placed and then pulled a second later. It might be a real order, sure, but it could also be a strategic bluff to influence other traders. The key takeaway is this: you can never, ever assume those orders are permanent. They're not glued to the screen. Second reason, volatility changes everything. You know, in a quiet, calm market, the depth chart might look really thick and stable. But the second things get crazy, liquidity providers pull their orders way back, spreads widen, and that beautiful depth you saw just 30 seconds ago can completely disappear. The chart you saw then is not the chart you're trading on now. And the third reason is that faraway depth is basically useless for your immediate trade. Think about it. Your market order is going to execute against the orders closest to the current price. A giant wall 5% away does absolutely nothing to stop you from getting a terrible fill right here, right now, if the liquidity right at the top of the book is thin. Okay, so that's the problem. Let's pivot to the solution, and this is really the core of this whole thing. It's what we'll call the sizing principle. This is all about shifting your entire focus from what is on the chart to how much you were trying to trade. And this slide right here perfectly illustrates that mental shift. A beginner looks at the depth chart and asks, wow, how big is that wall? A pro looks at the exact same chart and asks a totally different question. Okay, how big is my trade compared to that nearby wall? It's a complete game changer of a perspective. So here's the core principle in one sentence. Your execution quality, meaning how good of a price you actually get, depends almost entirely on your trade size relative to the nearby depth. If your order is just a drop in the bucket, your price impact will be low. But if your order is big enough to chew through several levels of the order book, your average fill price is going to get worse and worse. All right, let's make this super practical. Here's the rule in action. This is a simple framework you can start using today on both centralized and decentralized exchanges. This is it. This is the one habit that can save you from so many bad trades. You got to burn this into your brain. If your planned order is going to eat up a big chunk of the liquidity you can see right near the price, you have 3 professional choices. You either reduce your size, use a limit order, or you just skip the trade. That's it. So on a centralized exchange, a CEX, it's a really simple 4-step process. Step 1, you open up the order book or the depth chart. Step 2, and this is key, you ignore all the noise and focus only on the first few price levels. Step 3, you compare your planned order size to the amount of liquidity that's just sitting right there. And step 4, if your order is too big for what's available, well, you know the drill. Reduce your size, use a limit order, or just walk away from the trade. And you know what? The exact same principle works on a decentralized exchange, a DEX. You just look for different clues. First, look at that price impact warning. The DEX is literally screaming at you what we've been talking about. Second, check the minimum received amount.
If that number is way lower than you expect, that's another huge red flag that your size is too big for the current liquidity. The response is pretty much the same. Reduce your size, maybe tighten your slippage, or just skip the trade entirely.
And this brings us to the final and maybe the most important piece of the puzzle. This isn't just some technical trick. This is about developing a professional mindset. It's about choosing discipline over the need to always be doing something. You have to understand this. Learning to recognize when not to trade is a real skill. When you see that the depth is thin, or volatility is spiking, or you realize your trade size just doesn't fit the market conditions, the rational, professional move is to do nothing. Taking no trade is an active and often a very profitable decision.
Because it all comes down to this one powerful idea. You don't get paid for being busy. You don't get paid for clicking buttons. You get paid for having a good process and for having the discipline to stick to it. So I'll leave you with this question. The next time the markets get wild and that depth chart looks thin and scary, are you going to force a trade and just hope for the best? Or are you going to remember the sizing principle, recognize the conditions for what they are, and actually use your new edge? The choice, as always, is yours.